this really a problem? If you've been starved for Dragon Ball manga content lately, there is a thing called Super Dragon Ball Heroes Ultra God Mission, and I've been catching up the last few chapters, and also finding a good old little Screenrant article that got me thinking about something. And it has something to do with the sweetheart of Dragon Ball 2022, Pan. But if you do like these sort of videos, do leave a subscribe. It really does help the channel, and little like for this video because I think a lot of people need to hear about this. So what is Ultra God Mission, Masako? Well, essentially, it's like the Tournament of Power, but only this time with the time scrolls instead of the universe. So you think the Tournament of Power was epic? No, this is all time itself. You thought that the Tournament of Power was pretty big, a big deal. No, this requires the deletion of multiple multiverses. The main meat of today's discussion here comes from an article that's talked about this particular instance in chapter 6. And it's to do with Hit of Universe 6 and Xeno Pan, which has probably been one of the major highlights of Dragon Ball Heroes since ever, having a crush on them. Sorry, X Pan fans, you're out of luck here. I just find the entire thing really, really intriguing because Hit will show no reciprocation whatsoever. He doesn't even call her by name. She's referred to as Goku's grandchild and is told to shut up. Oh no! Her beloved then gets trapped in a glass prison again because, you know, I'll leave the basic premise more about all the different characters in the video up top. She's upset by this and is then wanting to go and help. And then Xeno Gohan, because there's a Xeno Gohan as well, goes, you can't help, and why are you grieving over an enemy team? And this thing, love has nothing to do with being enemies. And I find this utterly hilarious because if you read this just as is, you think, oh, that's her declaration of love, and you would exactly be like Gohan right there, utterly shocked because that's his little girl. But I love the fact that I don't think even the translators were sure about this because they added love. They were covering themselves, and I find this perfect. Good job, folks. You managed to save yourself from getting the ire of people going, well, that's not what the original version said. The translators weren't even sure about it. Let me take you to the article which actually got me chuckling a little bit, and I think it's kind of gone a little bit excessive. But either way, Ultra God Mission itself is actually really, really good. Because realistically, it takes everything from the promotional anime that you may have seen about this actual plot and enhances them. So here you go, this is the article itself, and I know I shouldn't be giving Screenrant the time of day here, but I just wanted to show you this, and I have omitted the name of the person who wrote this article because I don't want them getting any flack from this. Dragon Ball gave Gohan's daughter the franchise's most ridiculous romance. Okay, that's fair enough, but one thing you have to remember here, it's not the same version of Pan and Gohan, it's the Xeno version. Dragon Ball has officially jumped the shark. About that. Dragon Ball Ultra God Mission, this is a side manga to the card game. This does not really have anything to do with the actual manga timeline, because Xeno Pan doesn't exist in that. But to be fair, it is kind of official. It's more official than a fan manga like Kakame or Sai or Multiverse, what have you, but it's not really something that you could describe as canon. And once again, I just see this thing and I love the translators putting quotation marks on it to cover themselves. And honestly, the person who wrote this fell for it hook, line and sinker. So Pan declaring her love for Hit in this Dragon Ball spin-off is certainly one of the series' strangest attempts at romance to date. Never mind Krillin falling in love with his would-be murderer Android 18. Sorry, what? Android 18 in the present timeline didn't kill anyone, nor showed any intention to, really. This pseudo-romance, which happens to be very one-sided, as most of Dragon Ball's romances are. Do they think that Vegeta and Bulma's relationship is one-sided? They're a good couple, alright? Goku and Chi-Chi? Goku appreciates Chi-Chi, just in his own special way. And Chi-Chi loves... There is a dynamic here. And I can understand why it could be considered and perceived to be one-sided, but when you look deep down, they are actually cohesive relationships, even though it does get stretched out a bit in terms of conventional stuff. But then again, I can understand. Toriyama's not very good with writing relationships to make them absolutely clear. Vague is the watchword with him, and progression does not happen. It's like, oh, those two might be interested, and suddenly, boom, oh, they're married and they have children. Okay, that's kind of fair. Within Dragon Ball, many of the female characters are hardly given any time to be developed and fleshed out, and the vast majority of these that do stay relevant are eventually sidelined as love interests or are used to further a love interest-esque gag. Chi-Chi was sidelined mostly for the fact that Toriyama really ran out of ideas for her and just got bored. Bulma's not been written out of the... Bulma? She does tons of stuff. Dr. Bulma is in there. Android 18 may not really do as much as she used to, but she's still there. She still provides Krillin a good amount of support. She fights in the Tournament of Power. And Android 17 being around again brings back more relevancy. The Red Ribbon Army being a thing brings back more relevancy. Videl, who admittedly, this does have a point, is now being brought back in again because, hey, she actually has a job, according to the superhero, as a martial arts instructor. Brilliant! She has a job focused around her talents. Thank you. That has redeemed a lot of Super's errors. Xeno Pan's interest in Hit clearly falls under the latter, as there is almost no chance the time assassin Hit would want anything to do with her without a little character assassination of his own. I like that quip there, fair enough, because, hey, get it? He's an assassin. And that bit is okay, kind of true, because if you suddenly made Hit go, "Oh, I never realized it, Pan, but something about you fires something within me that I have never experienced before in 1,000 years. Out of all the millions of people that I have met and mostly killed, you alone have been the thing that has managed to make me see differently." It would sound like a Mary Sue fanfiction. Okay, alright, that's a little bit fair. Dragon Ball immediately giving Gohan's daughter Pan a love interest gag as soon as she becomes somewhat relevant to the plot is classic Dragon Ball, and a sign that the series really hasn't yet changed for the better. All in all, this manga has actually turned out to be pretty good. It's actually a really solid story. The story itself has been enough to actually get me interested in Super Dragon Ball Heroes again, after many moons and years of me not being, ever since they dropped the ball with having Cumber around instead of Raditz. But there is a slight point here. Can you really get your undies in a twist about a side manga which has absolutely no connection or impact to the main story? I don't really think so. This is just but one side story that has slightly more legitimacy than a fan manga. And besides, it's really open-ended and could easily be brushed aside because the translators have even gone like, well, we don't really know for sure whether this is a genuine love romantic thing, so we're just gonna sort of leave it open-ended for your own discussion and debate. Hence what I'm doing right now. I think this article is forgetting something. Pan is not the only source of a romantic gag in this story, because this guy is part of a romantic gag. Yamcha saves the life of the female warrior in black by saying, "Hey guys, all we needed to do was find the fairy to move on to the next round. We don't actually have to kill this person." And sure enough, she sort of becomes interested in Yamcha for saving her life. To put all the onus on Pan and Hit and condemning that solely? Well, are you gonna condemn this too? And say, oh, this is unfair on Yamcha? No, people want this to happen. And granted, yes, there is sort of a reciprocation, but not really. It's still a bit vague. And I just want to stress this out here. Even Pan goes, Uncle Yamcha has a soft spot for girls in every history. Do you call that a romantic gag? They're sort of poking fun at Yamcha anyway. You gotta acknowledge this one too, because this is more of a joke actually, because it's Yamcha. And Yamcha could be described as a joke of the franchise, something I talked about up here. Then you gotta sort of condemn this too, but you're not going to. I think this article's more jump the gun than jump the shark here, because it's not really a major thing. It's not been mentioned since in chapters 7 and 8 that have come out subsequently. It's more focused on the actual story itself. Had this actually ended up being more than it actually was, and Pan got herself more in trouble, and yet, to be fair, Xeno Gohan did end up being turned into a glass prison thing, you know, but that can easily be rectified because, hey, they managed to win thanks to Yamcha's bravery? The major issue would have been if this became the main focus of the story, which it hasn't. This is just a side thing, it's not been mentioned again. If this had become more substantial within the story, then there might be an issue. This is just a one and done thing. So yeah, if you're going to be complaining about this, complain about this too, alright? Anyway folks, let me know down in the comments what you think about this. Do you think this actually has some legitimacy? Because if it does, I could easily make a what if story about this, a little mini slash fic, because it is kind of funny. But But not at Pan's expenses, just in general. Catch you later!